First of all, we should all give a warm welcome to Aaron Muhly, tonight's presenter. Aaron is the founder of Eve Law and previously was a practicing lawyer working with reputable US law firms such as Baker & McKenzie and KPMG. Nice to know that Aaron regularly holds trainings in topics such as clear legal writing, negotiation strategies, and high-value writing in English. And I also had the chance to attend one of Aaron's clear legal writing courses, and it was a real eye-opener, so it's highly recommended to everyone. If you have any questions, please just ask them in the Q&A section, and Aaron will answer them promptly. And Aaron, the floor is yours. We are keen to hear your guidance and tips on legal English for in-house colleagues.
All right, thanks, Marcel, and thanks, Arsboni, for putting on this cool festival again. It's very nice for the legal community here in Hungary. And thanks to all of you, the attendees that came into this session. Unfortunately, we're using this Zoom webinar format, so I can't even see your boxes. I just see a list of your names on the side, but I'm still going to try to make this interactive and fun for all of you. As Marcel mentioned, my background is I'm a lawyer. I started my career off in Chicago at this law firm called Jenner & Block. It's like a big U.S. Typical law firm, and it was a lot of long hours, and I got sick of it. So I made the crazy decision to come over here to Hungary. Don't ask me why. And I started working at Baker McKenzie as a lector trainer, and I just kind of fell into this training world where nowadays I'm working on writing skills, negotiation, presentation with lawyers, not just around Europe, but because of COVID, I'm even doing stuff in Australia, around the world. And what I wanted to do with you folks today, as I thought it would be an interesting topic, is to talk about this concept of Hunglish. And I kind of made it sound intimidating because I said for the title, Hunglish in the boardroom. Good heavens, that sounds terrible. And the idea from this, don't blame me. The idea from this came about 5-10 years ago. A company here in Hungary approached me and they said, hey, can you teach our lawyers to make their English writing better? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll come in and I can do that. And then they said, it's really important because we have all these new senior managers and stuff, and a lot of them are foreigners, and they're going to be getting this stuff in English. And I was like, all right, yeah, that's going to be okay. They're like, yeah, but we can't have Hunglish in the boardroom. And I was just like, Jesus, that's a little bit an overreaction. But I gave them this course, and hopefully I'm going to give you some nice tips today that will be, one, give you insights about if you're having concerns about how to write in English well, and your concerns that your Hungarians kind of coming into it, I'll help you with that. But before we get into all of this, can anyone tell me what is Hunglish? Because, this is not my native language. I'm not like a Hunglish speaker. So, or a Hungarian speaker, not a Hunglish speaker. I don't know. Is it possible? Can you guys put in chat? Anyone brave enough to try to put in the definition of Hunglish? Can anyone tell me this from a Hungarian perspective? What the hell that is? Marcel, can we allow people to use chat now, or is that going to be
people can use chat, I think.
All right, is anyone brave enough? I'll give you a couple seconds. It could be humorous, it could be whatever, but anyone want to be bold enough to venture what Hunglish is?
In the meantime, I can give you my answer because
Marcel, you're a good player.
English is, yeah, I'm gonna play. You can hear it, but you cannot really put a definition on it. You can it's something that you can hear. I really don't think that this is something you can put a definition under.
All right, so it's something.
It's just a feeling. It's just a really 7th sense or 8th sense. I don't know.
Oh, it's an 8th sense. All right, so fine. Now look, for everyone, I just deal with the written English. I don't deal with the spoken English. So maybe you can hear it, but let me put everyone at ease and calm everyone down. Hungarians, you guys are really good writers in English, although maybe that's not what you're told at the law firms and stuff, but I work with lawyers around Europe, and you guys do very, very well in comparison to other cultures. When probably the best in Europe are the Scandinavians. They're even better than the native English speakers in English because they just are. Then you got the Brits, and after the Brits, maybe you got the Germans, Austrians, and I think the Hungarians come in kind of after that. But you're not anywhere close to the bottom. That's where, unfortunately, the Romance speakers come in, and like the French, the Spanish, Italians, like they have some really exotic ways of using English. So the thing is this, that one, I think this Hunglish concept, I don't really like it. I think it's quite negative, obviously. And I think it's also used by like the language teaching industry in Hungary to kind of push you guys down and make you feel like you need their services. I don't want to push you down, but what I want to do is help you kind of see some patterns or misunderstandings about how English works that sometimes my students tell me. And the reason they have these misunderstandings is that their misunderstandings are based on how Hungarian works. So I'm going to share like a handout for today. And no one was brave enough to play my chat game. So, wait, KM said, for me, English and how you put sentences together grammatically. All right, KM, you're awesome. All right. Hunglish is the way of pronunciation, how you put sentences together grammatically. It's often like mirror translation of from Hun to English. And you're absolutely right. In written English, that's what we're going to talk about. When the only way you can really make Hunglish stuff is when you guys have to do these official translations. When you do that, it can turn into a disaster. But when you guys are normally writing like advice to a client or whatever, the Hunglish is not really coming up so much. But if you're worried about this, let me share my screen. Marcel, am I sharing this Word document out?
Yes. It's
okay.
Document, yes.
So everyone, if you ask me like, how do I identify what could potentially be a Hunglish sentence? Let's do an exercise now. If you take a look here at the top of the page, there are two versions of some text. And what I ask you all to do is just read through this. And when you're done, put into the chat box the version that you think might be more likely to be described as Hunglish. Which one, is more annoying to you, if assuming that you feel that way? Is it number 1 or number 2? Which one is the more annoying version or more problematic version? So what are we going with here, everyone? Oh, this is slow reading day.
So for me, it's definitely 1A, the first one.
So Marcel's go with 1A.
What was the question? Which is better or which is worse?
Which is worse? Which one?
The second one. The second one, sorry.
Is worse?
Yes.
Oh, now you're killing me. Now, Marcel, you're going to get yourself in trouble. All right. So everyone else, does anyone have a preference on this? All right. Fine. Then I'm going to lead you through this. Now, the way to analyze this text, or should I say 1A is worse? So she's going to conflict with you, Marcel. Thank you, or you made me freak out there. So anyway, everyone, this is what I do. This is what KM was talking about, like how you put sentences together grammatically. There's many different options. There's many different ways of putting a sentence together that's grammatically correct in English, but not all versions have the same effect on readers. And what I encourage my students to do is the first step to analyzing any sentence to try to predict if it's Hunglish or not is to find the first conjugated verb. And I'll highlight this for you. It's the leases, or the are least. And then what you should do is just kind of highlight backwards to the beginning. Highlight backwards to the beginning. And this sounds weird to my students, but the longer that line is, the more likely you're causing pain for your readers. I know this sounds insane, but what you should understand is that there are really interesting patterns in English sentences, and they were discovered by the Prague School of Linguistics. And let me explain this whole concept for you. Let me share my whiteboard. So our Czech buddies, and Marcel, do I have the whiteboard up now?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks. All right. So the people in the Czech Republic, they were studying like Indo-European languages and the patterns they have about the beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence. And what they discovered is that English sentences, Czech sentences, whatever, not Hungarian, obviously, but everyone else, they tend to work the following way. They start with a short beginning and a simple beginning. And they move to a long ending and a complex ending. And if you're wondering what is the cutoff between these two parts, it's the verb. And the way to imagine English sentences, and this is a stupid visualization, I apologize, but imagine the scales with the Lady of Justice. And the left scale is the one, that's the beginning of the sentence. Let's call it that. It should be light. It should be at the top. It should be short, simple, light, stupid, boring stuff. After the verb, it's going to go down. It's going to get long and complex and heavy. And that's kind of the natural balance of Indo-European languages, but definitely in English. So going back, sorry, I just screwed that up. So going back now, if you look, this sentence is way out of balance because the beginning is the long, heavy part in front of the verb. This sentence, it's much better because we got the heavy, long, complex stuff after the verb. I know that sounds insane, but just watch because there's some common problems that my students talk about. The first thing they say is like, if I ask them why they would write a sentence like in number 1A, they would say, well, let me get all the coloring off here because it's going to get confusing. They will tell me that this is the important stuff in the sentence. And you got to put the important stuff at the beginning of your sentence, right? Wrong. That's how Hangsúly stress works in Hungarian. The problem for you is that in English, the stress doesn't go to the beginning, it goes to the end. And this is probably the hardest thing I had for myself when I was learning Hungarian because to this day, if you don't want to hear me speaking Hungarian, because I say everything backwards and everyone gets really impatient with me. And it's the same thing that's going to happen with you, especially if you're translating word from Hungarian to English. You have to take the stuff at the beginning and move it to the end. And you got to begin your sentences with stupid things like the company. Yeah, which sounds terrible in Hungarian because you usually don't put actors in front of your verbs. Now, look, let me give you an example of this Hangsúly, the conflict between Hungarian and English. If I want to stress what in a sentence, for example, yesterday, John brought Peter 2 books. I'm going to put the 2 books at the end. That's what I'm talking about. I'm stressing the books. In Hungarian, you put it in front of the verb. So, János tegnap 2 könyvet vitt el Péternek. Great. If we want to shift the stress to the when, then I say, John brought Peter 2 books yesterday. Or you guys, János tegnap vitt el 2 könyvet Péternek. And you can go on and on. But one thing to be careful with is that English sentences start boring and dumb. And this is really hard for Hungarians because it's the exact opposite thinking. So one trap that's going to happen to you is that you're going to you're going to begin your sentence with a long, complex piece of information. The exciting part, the fireworks. And I'm going to tell you, well, that's going to create a Hunglish problem. You got to put it to the end. And that sucks for you guys because that's the kuka in Hungarian. Yeah, that's where you put the unimportant stuff. It's backwards in English. All right, so that's the first problem. Let's get to the second problem. The second thing is, was your English teacher insane? What I'm helping my students fix these sentences, and this is a pattern I saw when I was at Baker as a lector. I think maybe 40% of my job was there was these like long beginnings to sentences. And then the verb was in the passive voice. And the fix was just to put the verb in the active voice and flip everything around. That was my job. It was boring. And then, when I would talk to my students about it, sometimes they would say, oh, no, the active voice is not so good. And I asked them, but where did you hear that? And they would say, my English teacher told me that the passive voice, it's very elegant. It's a nice style. The active voice, not so good. All right. If you ever were told that by your English teacher, that person was insane and should be fired immediately because there's no basis for that advice. If you want to know the Anglo-Saxon view on active versus passive voice, it's all about the active voice. First example. Never use the passive voice where you can use the active voice. This comes from George Orwell when he was writing a treatise on politics in the English language. This is also the quote that is being used in the Economist Style Guide when they're talking about stay away from the passive voice. So the British, they're big active voice fans. Now here we have another quote. It's use the active voice. This is from Elements of Style. This is the Bible that, all American university students, law students, whatever, this is what we get for our writing guide. It's called the Elements of Style. Use the active voice. And the third thing we're told is minimize the passive voice. And this is from Brian Gardner. If you don't know who this guy is, he's the leading expert on legal English. He's the editor of Black's Law Dictionary, which is it's the first book you get in law school. It's the main legal dictionary for Anglo-Saxon lawyers. And he's just recognized as the expert on legal English. So everyone is saying, hey, use active voice. And what I'm saying is they're both wrong. Your English teachers are kind of stupid, but the Anglo-Saxon view is not correct either. What you need to understand is there's a huge problem when you make default rules with language that you say that you should do this or you should do that, because language doesn't work that way. When you do different things, you're making different choices and they're creating different effects on your readers. And if you follow a rule like, okay, I got to use the active voice, that's dumb, because obviously that we would just delete the passive voice, and the vice versa. If we say that the passive voice is bad, like why don't we delete that? So it doesn't make any sense. You just need to make the choice that's going to allow you to start your sentence with something nice, short, and fluffy before you get to the verb. And let me demonstrate this concept for you so you'll see how this works. If you look at this text here, here's an exercise we're going to do. We're going to fix this text. And let me read it out for you. It's kind of painful. A threat to offers exists in the form of the sanctions that may be applied by the financial supervision and the ambiguity surrounding certain technical aspects of takeover offers. All right, here we go. First point, always find the first conjugated verb. And it exists. The second thing now is let's highlight backwards. And if you've been paying attention, you're like, hey, a threat to offers, that's not so long. The ladies' scales of justice aren't getting screwed up. And to an extent, you're right. But there's another problem here that we should be aware of, and that is this verb exists. The reason that we have verbs in English and in Hungarian and all other types of languages is the verb position is where you're supposed to put the main action of your writing. That's what readers are expecting. That's what makes our writing clear and understandable. And the problem is that when you use a verb like existing, you're telling the reader nothing is happening here. And the problem is that this sentence is extremely misleading because there's something really important happening here. And the writer is hiding it from the reader in a very suspicious manner. God, I can't talk now. Let me explain that suspicion. A threat. A threat is an action, right? If I threaten you, that's a negative action I'm directing towards you. And there's a trick that we as lawyers and other people can make, and that is we take our actions out of our verbs and we put them into what are called nominalizations. That just means it's an action hidden in a noun. For example, you don't decide something, you make a decision. The judge didn't judge something, he issued a judgment. I think you get the point. And one of the problems with nominalizations is that they can be quite heavy for readers, especially when you stick them in front of the verb. Even if the position in front of the verb is not very long, if it's hiding an important action in there, it's going to feel quite complex for readers. So the solution is this. To fix this sentence, what we're going to do is we're just going to put the action into a verb. And then if we put threat into a verb, we have two options. We could use the active voice and we could talk about who's doing the threatening or what's doing the threatening. Or we can use the passive voice and we could say, okay, who's being threatened? So let me show you the two options now. If we use the active voice, this is what the sentence is going to look like. And you can tell me what you like. Oh, I forgot it. The or. Now, I do this with my students over and over and over. And every time everyone says 1A, that's annoying as hell. And let me explain why. The sanctions that may be applied by the financial supervision and the ambiguity surrounding technical aspects of takeover offers. According to Lady Justice, that's some really heavy beginning now, right? And then the other option is, offers are threatened by the sanctions that may be applied by the financial supervision and the ambiguity surrounding certain technical aspects of takeover offers. In English, the long, complex stuff, you move it to the end. Now, the important thing about this exercise is that if I ask you, which sentence feels more passive, you're going to say 1A feels more passive, but that's in the active voice. 1B feels more active, but that's in the passive voice. So you can't rely on your feelings now. That's going to be misleading. But here, the passive voice is better because it gives us a nicer beginning to the sentence, a better subject. Now, there's one last trap I want to bring to everyone's attention, and this is the so ishmaelish trap. And let me run this through for you. This is a little bit more complicated, a little bit longer, but I'm going to read out the two versions of text here, and then I'm going to explain to you what's going on that causes most people to struggle with the first one. So read this along with me. As background to the case, the loan agreement stated that the loan was secured by a bank guarantee. Exciting. Despite the fact that the statement of indemnity limited repayment to a specific maximum sum below the guarantee amount, when the loan was not repaid, the lender demanded repayment of the loan amount under the guarantee from the guarantor. All right. Most people, when they read that text, they feel like something's missing or they got a little bit lost. So let's take a look at 1B. The first sentence is the same. As background of the case, the loan agreement stated that the loan was secured by a bank guarantee. When the loan was not repaid, the lender demanded repayment of the loan amount under the guarantee from the guarantor, despite the fact the statement of indemnity limited repayment to a specific maximum sum below the guarantee amount. All right, one last trick for everyone. So far, we've been analyzing sentences by themselves, but you don't read that way. Every time you read a sentence, you're trying to understand the relationship between that sentence and the previous sentence and the next sentence. And the way to analyze relationships between sentences is to focus on, once again, what comes in front of the verb. So the verb here, and I'm talking about the first conjugated verb. The verb is this, and we got statements of indemnity here. The verb is this, so we got the loan here. Now, here's the problem with 1A, is that if I read back the first sentence, as background to the case, the loan agreement stated that the loan was secured by bank guarantee. Were you expecting to hear about statements of indemnity at this point? If you're like most of my students, you're like, hell no, that was weird. All right. Now, with 1B, if I do the same thing, as background of the case, the loan agreement stated that the loan was secured by a bank guarantee. Was it shocking to hear about the loan at this point? No, because we talked about it a lot in the previous sentence. Now, here's a third problem, and this goes back to our buddies in the Czech Republic. So let me pull up the whiteboard again. English sentences and all these Indo-European languages, they don't just start short and simple, but you got to start them with old or familiar information. And that means you move after the verb to the new, exciting, unfamiliar information. English sentences start boring, stupid, simple, and most importantly, they oftentimes repeat a word from the previous sentence to ensure that the reader sees the link between the sentences. This drives my Hungarian students crazy because you have this absurd I can't speak Hungarian today. Szabály. You're not supposed to repeat words. You're supposed to use your beautiful vocabulary. Got it. I understand. And you don't have to repeat words all the time in English, But before the verb, it's actually quite cool and useful and appreciated by your clients if you actually take a word from the previous sentence and repeat it there. That's not your only option, but that's a safe space that's going to avoid you creating any kind of weird Hunglish stuff in your writing. Now, let me go back and demonstrate all this stuff with one last exercise. And I'm going to give everyone this handout. I'll give it to the Arsboni people. They can forward it to you guys if you want it. But let me show you how all this stuff comes together with one last demonstration. Look at this text here. Just 2 sentences. The management does not forecast any major changes in the bank financing facilities. For 2011, euro 7 million repayment of the Hypo Junior facility and a euro 2 million prepayment of the city facility are the only forecasted changes. If you want to start analyzing your writing based on the principles I've been showing you today, the first step is this: go find your verb, the first conjugated verb in each sentence. And then highlight back to the beginning. Highlight back to the beginning. And you know, this is not the most precise tool when I'm teaching the clear writing. Like, I'll give you something better than this, but this is a starting point. If you have like more green, well, let's change color. Let's make it more absurd. You don't have to do this, but let's just say if you have more green before the verb, or if the green is bigger than whatever's coming after the verb, that's bad. That's weird. That's not normal. That's not your simple beginnings for readers. So if you look at the first sentence here, the management, that's short, that's simple, that's pretty damn familiar for people. We've heard about management. We talked about management, no problem. The problem is in the second sentence, this is a massive subject. This is a lot of information. How do we fix it? All right, let me explain. The way to fix any of these sentences is the following. We're going to play around with the verb. We're going to change it, and we're going to find a better subject to begin the sentence with. So there's different options now. We could talk about and use the actually existing verb, and we could play around with the active voice, passive voice, stuff like that. Another thing we can do is we can play around with these nominalizations for repaying and prepaying. And if you wanted to make paying as the verb, you know, then you would need a subject. So you could talk about what's being, or who's doing the paying. That's obviously the company. Or what's being repaid, that's those facilities. And if you wanted, you could try to fix the sentence that way. It's not going to work so well, so I avoid doing that with you guys. I'll show you another option. Right now, we have this verb are. And I told you that usually it's better to put the actions in your verbs. But sometimes, you know, even these boring verbs are going to be helpful. Because if you think about are or is, from a mathematical perspective, that's the equal sign. And that means that anything before the is and everything afterwards, you can flip the order and it's basically saying the exact same thing. And take a look at this. Let's flip the order here. What if we say, for 2011, the only forecasted changes are a 7 million euro repayment of the Hypo Junior facility and a euro 2 million prepayment of the city facilities. Oops, I left out the R. All right, now we got this nice short subject. You know, ladies' justice has been satisfied, so that's great. But what's going to happen is as you start to apply these principles in your writing, when you fix the sentence, you'll get like a click in your head. You're like, oh, shit, that's the way it was supposed to be written. And I know this for 3 reasons. One, that's a nice, short, simple beginning, or I guess it's short and simple. But most importantly, the third reason, if you go back and you connect it to the previous sentence, now everything goes together perfectly. Because the only forecasted changes, well, the previous sentence was talking about forecasting major changes. So those go together. That's the old information that links those 2 sentences together. Any other way of trying to construct this, like the original way, that's going to kill your readers. So let me end by giving you like an anti-Hunglish tool. It's, for those of you that were in my writing course, it's a variation on the magic tool. And what I recommend is everything I teach is about editing. If you try to apply any of the principles I told you when you're writing a first draft, it's going to be crazy. It's like telling you to use the active voice or the passive voice. Nobody's like thinking about like what voice they're using when they're writing. That would be weird. So don't think about my Lady Justice scales when you're writing, or it's going to make you crazy. But afterwards, take a couple minutes to go look through your writing. And then, for each sentence, check to see if the verb is in the first half. Yeah. If it's coming at the end or pretty late after the beginning, then go through the steps I talked about. First of all, what are the actions in the sentence? Take a look at the verb. Take a look at these nominalizations, hiding actions. And then ask yourself, okay, what are the actors or recipients? Like, who's doing that action? That's the active voice. Or who or what is receiving that action? That's going to be the passive voice. And what you're looking for is an answer that's short and familiar. Yeah, short, simple, and familiar. And then to fix the sentence, all you need to do is place, I'm really bad with these boxes, place the main action in the verb, stick it in front of that, the actor or recipient, and then basically what happens is you copy and paste everything to the end. There's one exception with conjunctions, but don't worry about that here. Just make sure that you get that nice, short, simple subject at the beginning, and usually everything fits together nicely for you. So I have a demo of this in the handout. So if you want to see what I was doing earlier, that's great. Otherwise, I'm going to stop talking now and take questions.
All right, thank you, Aaron. You can put your questions to Q&A or chat functions at the end at the bottom of your screen. Otherwise, I just have a quick question because I think it was quite clear what we have heard. What do you think? What would be what tips you could give to somebody who wants to reduce his or her Hunglish in speaking? Because in writing, it's tips you can rules you can follow. But what do you think, especially you who are learning Hungarian and speaking English? How can you? What do you think? What can be done to avoid Hunglish speaking?
All right. So first of all, everyone, there's a reason I don't teach spoken English. Like I'm not good at it. So, even my accent's terrible now. I got this I got Hungarian. It's like an English accent with the Hungarian style. So you ask a good question, myself. I never got anywhere in pronunciation. So you're asking the wrong guy. But what I would do probably is like, if you really are concerned about your accent, maybe there's two options. Like one is like the common approach is I'm sure now, like, especially in COVID, like you can get some like native speaker online English lessons, like, and you could just do this practice. But really, if you're talking about like losing the accent, there's probably only two ways to do that. One is you got to go live abroad, because it's just not possible on a daily basis when you switch back and forth between Hungarian and English. Like it's going to be hard to learn the accent. The other option, like I guess might not be a bad idea, is to talk to like an acting coach, because acting coaches oftentimes can teach like how to switch between different pronunciations and accents. If you really need to lose the accent, fine. But I think it's snobbery on behalf of Hungarians to worry about the accent. Like in Hungarian, it's bad to have an accent. If you like have Szögedi or whatever crap, like you guys are weird about it. In the States, for most of the world, like it's kind of cool and funny as long as I can understand you. The Scottish people I can't understand, so it's kind of frustrating. But for listening to a Hungarian with an accent, it's not like, oh, my ears are burning, like please stop. It's just like, oh, you guys got an accent too, but it's not obnoxious. So I wouldn't waste time on it. But if you want, I would go with an acting coach, I think. Sorry for the long answer.
Okay, one last question. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to the writing part. Okay.
Yeah.
According to your experience, your students, among your students, which is the first main problem when it comes to writing in English, or when it comes to the Hunglish part of this question?
You
can say anything specifically which would.
Because the funny thing, Marcel, a lot of times when I'm teaching the courses, I'm collecting writing samples from the lawyers, And, like, yeah, I could slip in like, even a native English lawyer's sample and just put a Hungarian name on it. And you'd be like, oh shit, like that Hungarian, like how bad was that? And so I can't like put my finger on it. That example I gave with like a really long beginning with like the passive voice verb at the end, like, okay, that's one thing. But really, actually, Marcel, what I would be thinking about more is like the situation where you're going to have like the biggest dilemma is like when you're working at a big law firm or even a small law firm, and you got this foreign client and they want a translation of some decision or official document. I mean, Marcel, you had to do that stuff, and everyone hates doing that translation work. And the question really is like, how good do we have to make that? Does it have to be like good English, or could it be just like a word for word translation? And my advice for you is like, I would ask my boss, like how much time and effort I should put into this. Should I make it really good? Because, Marcel, it's a pain in the ass to, when you take a Hungarian sentence, it's flipping into English. It doesn't feel comfortable because it feels like you're changing the meaning if you're doing it right. Right. And so, what I would do if I were you, especially if you're a young lawyer, is like, I would talk to my boss, and, hopefully your boss is brave enough to talk to the client, is like, is this a translation that's going to go into the file that no one's ever going to read? Okay, let's do the Hunglish, quick translate. Don't worry about it. If not, you want to clarify that. And then you'll have to understand, I got to do more work, but maybe it's easier for junior lawyers to take that approach, because I think, sometimes it's they do too much work and it's like unnecessary. So, that's the way I would view it. Does that help in that respect?
Yeah.
Yeah. You love those translations, man.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Don't leave me here hanging, or we have. Okay. Someone asked, anonymous attendee. That's great. All right. So anyway, what is the best way to learn vocabulary? All right, so look, I got a better response. Can I put it into the chat for everyone? Oh, just a second. I have to. Oh, I can share my screen. Let me do it that way. Everyone, give me a second. I'm going to pull up a book like that you guys.
In the meantime, I'm going to recommend to everybody the next session from 7 p.m., which is about digital nomads. And I'm going to put the Zoom link into the chat box after you posted your.
All right. So whoever asked about like the best way to learn vocabulary, shit, that's a tough question. Let me do something better for you. And I always, when I write articles, whatever, like everyone's asking, like, okay, I got problems with legal English. I always put this in here. So I think I'm showing right now. Marcel, am I showing my Amazon here?
Yes.
All right. So I don't know if you can get this version because it's an older version. It's a dictionary of modern legal usage. You might have to go with this Gardner's Dictionary of Legal Usage. But anyway, you want like a legal usage book from Brian Gardner. As I mentioned, he's the editor of the Black's Law Dictionary, and this book is awesome. I wish I had it when I was working as a lawyer because it would have been great. When I was sitting at Baker as a lecturer, like everyone used to come in my office and steal this book because this is like gold. The way this book works is like it's not really a dictionary. What he does is he goes through like most of the crazy Anglo-Saxon old feudal language that the legal English has. And he explains how you use it and what are usage mistakes. And like, is this British English or American English? It's like a really practical book. And if you're worried about like developing your legal English, I mean, you could sit around and read a stupid dictionary. But what I think is best is take a look at this book. I think with the complex or whatever, you have these translations. And what I saw at Baker is like people would use the translations from these Hungarian English legal dictionaries. And, you have a lot of options, and they would pull an option out that was like crazy. And what I would do is just point out, take a look at this, the meaning of this word in the book. Is that the usage you were intending? And they would say, oh, no, like, okay, fine. Let's use a better option. And usually there's synonyms in there that will help you pick a better option. So, anonymous attendee, like that's the way I would be trying to improve my legal English vocabulary. Any follow-up questions? I think we put everyone to sleep at this point. Uh-oh, we got the next session. All right, great, Marcel. All right, then if there are no other questions, I want to thank all of you for coming in your early evenings, and hopefully you enjoyed the meal as you listen to me ramble on through Hunglish. And I'm happy you could be here, and I'm happy you could participate in this legal fest. And Marcel, thanks for the invite as well.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
And I wish everyone all the best in their writing.